Anton Chekhov's 1904 play, The Cherry Orchard, set in early 20th century Russia, tells the story of Lyubov Andreyevna Ranevskaya and her family as they fall from the upper class. As their estate and cherry orchard slip away, Lyubov's family struggles to adjust to a new world order. The cherry orchard begins on a cold day in May on the estate of Lyubov Andreyevna Ranevskaya. After a 5-year absence, her homecoming is much anticipated by her friends, family, and staff. Her older adopted daughter Varya, family friend Lopakhin, a wealthy merchant, her maid Dunyasha, and Yepichodov, a clerk. As they wait in a room still called the nursery, they make last-minute preparations and lament that the train is late. Lopakhin reveals that although he's rich now, he grew up a peasant. He speaks fondly of Lyubov Andreyevna and her gentle treatment of him when he was just a boy. Lyubov Andreyevna, her younger daughter Anya, and governess Charlotta, and a footman named Yasha finally arrive. All are overcome with emotion at their homecoming. Lyubov Andreyevna's brother, Gayev, attends to the luggage, while his ancient servant Fears fusses over Lyubov Andreyevna and weeps with joy that she's home. Fears is a character who's also a symbol that represents the old Russian class structure and way of life. A product of the feudal system that ended 50 years earlier, Fears clings to old habits in words and deeds. In the old days, 40 or 50 years ago, the cherries were dried, soaked, marinated, and made into jam. He provides a connection to the past and to the cherry orchard itself for Lyubov Andreyevna and Gayev. Yet his care also becomes a problem for them to solve as they face the loss of the cherry orchard. And what happens to him in the play's dramatic end parallels what will become of the cherry orchard and the old world left behind, too. Here, characters come and go, reminiscing about the past and filling in details about what has happened while Lyubov Andreyevna was in Europe. Left alone, Anya tells Varya of the dire financial circumstances their mother endured in Paris. They also discuss a potential engagement between Varya and Lopakhin, but Varya insists that as a busy merchant, he doesn't have any time for her. Anya looks forward to running through the huge cherry orchard that is the estate's crown jewel, and the titular cherry orchard is the play's key symbol, one Chekhov uses to symbolize memory. The cherry orchard is extremely large, and given its massive size, the cherry orchard is the symbol around which all characterization and action in the play is built. Yet it doesn't exist. It's off stage. The audience never witnesses the actual orchard. Its existence is limited to the memories of the characters. Meaning is also defined by each character's memories of it. For Lyubov Andreyevna, Gayev, and initially Anya, the orchard symbolizes their personal memories of happy lives and abundant wealth before the threat of financial hardship. The cherry orchard also symbolizes the aristocratic class to which their family belongs. In many cases, it's the older characters rather than the younger characters who tend to view the orchard more positively. Yet the cherry orchard also represents the historical oppression caused by the aristocratic ruling class. Trofimov will soon explain that such a beautiful, expansive orchard was only made possible by the hard work of enslaved serfs. The cherry orchard's fate at the play's end signals the fall of the ruling class and the end of that oppression. As the afternoon wears on, Lopakhin informs the family that their worsening financial situation is even more serious now. If they don't cut down the cherry orchard and build summer cottages they can lease for income, the entire estate, including the orchard, will be sold at an auction in August. Gayev and Lyubov Andreyevna scoff at his suggestion and refuse to believe their famous orchard will be lost. Lopakhin leaves, exasperated by their refusal to do anything as trouble looms. Rather than discuss a plan of action to save the orchard, Gayev makes a speech to an honored bookcase because it's 100 years old. Anya and Varya scold him for talking too much. Lyubov Andreyevna visits with more friends who have come to see her. Pishik, a landowner, asks for a loan, but she has nothing to give. Trofimov, the former tutor of her son who passed away 5 years earlier, arrives looking much older. Gayev makes the unrealistic prediction that the estate shall not be sold as the tired travelers finally head off to sleep. Various servants gather one day in a meadow near the cherry orchard. Yepichodov plays the guitar. Charlotta says she does not know anything about her past. Dunyasha and Yasha flirt with each other. Then Lyubov Andreyevna, Gayev, and Lopakhin arrive talking about the fate of the cherry orchard. She and Gayev refuse to lease the land to build cottages for summer people because it's too vulgar. Lopakhin is frustrated to distraction because he knows this plan is the only way to save the orchard. Still, Lyubov Andreyevna and Gayev do nothing. Lyubov Andreyevna and Lopakhin reflect on their pasts. She explains that she's always squandered money. She came to financial ruin in France at the hands of a man who abandoned her. Then she even tried to kill herself. Lopakhin admits that he's an uneducated peasant whose father beat him, but he's become rich. Fears enters with Gayev's overcoat, complaining that when the serfs were set free, he didn't want to go. Trofimov, Anya, and Varya arrive. Trofimov offers a critique of the intelligentsia, intellectuals who philosophize but do nothing while the workers suffer. A stranger stumbles onto the scene and asks them for money, which Lyubov Andreyevna gives him to Varya's dismay, since there's nothing for their own servants to eat. Trofimov and Anya are left alone, and he thrills her with talk of a new future, of greater social equality, without the cherry orchard and the oppression it represents. In August, the group attends a dance at Lyubov Andreyevna's estate on the day of the auction to sell the cherry orchard. Everyone dances, but there's anxiety in the air about the auction. Varya weeps quietly, and Lyubov Andreyevna is anxious that Gayev and Lopakhin have been at the auction for so long. Charlotta provides comic relief by performing magic tricks and ventriloquism, which entrances family friend Pishik. Gayev and Lopakhin finally arrive. Gayev is unable to speak through his tears, but Lopakhin is giddy with excitement as he announces that he himself has bought the cherry orchard. Lyubov Andreyevna is overcome with emotion as Lopakhin expresses his joy and disbelief that he now owns the estate where his father and grandfather were slaves, and he can't wait to start chopping down the trees. Lopakhin reproaches Lyubov Andreyevna for not acting to save the orchard. She's left alone weeping bitterly. Anya and Trofimov return, and Anya tries to comfort her mother. Trofimov listens as Anya paints a picture of a hopeful future. In October, on moving day, the nursery is empty, save for some luggage and stray pieces of furniture. Lopakhin attempts to serve Lyubov Andreyevna, Gayev, and others champagne, but they refuse. Yasha, the footman, drinks it all himself. Lyubov Andreyevna has given her money away again to the peasants who have come to say goodbye. Everyone begins to scatter. Trofimov declares he will work for a class structure in which everyone is free. Lyubov Andreyevna is returning to Paris. Gayev plans to work at a bank, and Anya will finish school. Lopakhin has one final chance to propose to Varya, but he fails to do so. He awkwardly speaks to her about trivial matters and then leaves. She sobs quietly. She's now forced to become a housekeeper for a nearby family. Everyone is finally gone, except for Fears, who's ill. They all thought he had been taken to the hospital, but he remains behind. Fears lies down on the floor to wait for the family to return. He hears the sound of a string snapping, then the distant sound of an axe cutting down a tree in the cherry orchard. The snapped string symbolizes loss. This mournful sound first appears in Act 2 as Gayev comments on the permanence of nature. Fears comments that the sound was present when the serfs gained their freedom. Here, after Fears speaks the final words of the play, the snapped string is heard again as the sound of axes chopping echoes in the cherry orchard. This sad sound represents change and underscores the replacement of the feudal past with the commercial present. This symbol is unique in that it appears as a sound rather than as an object or part of the dialogue. Its sensory nature contrasts with the cherry orchard, which is referenced but never visualized on stage. The auditory strength of the sound easily overtakes the fading offstage presence of the cherry orchard. Anton Chekhov plays, like other works of realism, aimed to represent people and their problems more authentically and naturally. And the relatable themes have given the powerful, sometimes funny, sometimes poignantly tender and sad play enduring appeal. The theme of old world versus new world represents two worlds defined by differences in social class and how they collide in the cherry orchard. The setting of the play, Lyubov Andreyevna's estate, with its famous cherry orchard, represents the old world of aristocratic privilege. The play's characters embody the cultural and social crisis transforming Russia. The world of the upper classes is dying, and Lyubov Andreyevna and her brother Gayev watch hopelessly as former peasants like Lopakhin rise from serfdom to gain power as business people in the new modern world. Chekhov presents the forces of change as resourceful but unforgiving. He's sympathetic yet impatient with an aristocratic class that will not help itself as it faces ruin from this inevitable change. Lopakhin, the rich former peasant descended from serfs, controls Lyubov Andreyevna's future when he buys the estate. And it is in this exchange, the orchard passing from Lyubov Andreyevna to Lopakhin, that the old world succumbs to those who are now in power. Talk versus action is another major theme that illustrates class differences. Chekhov associates talk with the aristocracy. The leisured classes have time to talk and no need to act, because others, maids, valets, and serfs, have always worked for them. Action is associated with peasants in the new upwardly mobile middle and soon-to-be upper classes, represented by Lopakhin. The upper classes, defined by empty talk, struggles against doers and workers, like Lopakhin, whose actions are about to redefine their world. Characters in the play are also largely defined by their movement or lack thereof. Gaev talks about plans to save the cherry orchard, but takes no real action. And even when he's forced to get a job after the orchard is sold, everyone knows he won't last long. Trofimov talks, but unlike Lyubov or Gaev, his speeches are full of big ideas, supportive of the working class and critical of upper-class privilege. Chekhov doesn't present an either-or assessment of the past in The Cherry Orchard. The play does not portray the past as either good or bad. Instead, the past has both positive or negative aspects for most of the characters. Lyubov Andreyevna struggles to make sense of a past that's beautiful and brutal. Lopakhin seeks to escape his brutal past by working his way into a respectable future. Chekhov makes Trofimov the keeper of Russia's past and herald of Russia's future, reminding anyone who will listen of the brutality that built the class system, a system that is now eroding. He sees the cherry orchard as a symbol of a charmed past, but as an emblem of oppression. Fears dwells most resolutely in the past, remembering when the cherry orchard was a success. Yet he cannot recall the recipe for its once famous dried cherries, saying it's forgotten, nobody remembers. Poignant, as he too is eventually forgotten at the end of the play.